Happy Sabbath, everyone. So, today I'll be talking about a portion of my life and my journey with church and with God. It was 2020, and I was in the last stages of finishing my undergrad. Next steps were prepping for the MCAT and going to med school. Except, I knew deep down I did not want to go to med school. With the stress of me wanting to make my parents proud and what I truly wanted to do in life, I was torn. Throughout college, I attended multiple churches, but could never really settle on one. They were also Sunday churches, so there's that. Pastor Matt and I have been studying about which day is truly the Sabbath, but I digress. When you're young, you go to church because your parents tell you to. It's good for you. You learn about God. But it's also great because you get to spend time with your friends. And if I'm being honest, that was one of the biggest reasons I went. Even though I only saw them once a week, I was able to connect with them very easily, and they're some of my closest friends even to this day. Going back to the original part of my journey, I ultimately did not go to church during college, never really found a community that I enjoyed. Not in a bad way, but the connection just wasn't there. So it was the last couple of months before I decided on what to do for the next couple of years of my life, and I go on a trip with my buddies to Galveston. We have a great time, and one day they wanted to go swimming in the ocean. I do not like swimming, but because it seemed fun, I went in with my friends. We go in pretty far, enough to the point where I can't even feel the sand anymore, and I immediately panicked, and luckily one of my friends noticed and helped me back to shore. He checked in on me and made sure I was okay before heading back to swim. But before he goes back, I had noticed a book next to me, and it was the book that he had been reading throughout the trip. So I asked, "Hey, Thomas, do you mind if I read your book?" And he replied, "Of course, man. Let's chat about it after you finish it." The book is called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. I wanted to pass the time while they were swimming, and then as I was reading it, I realized it was a self-help book. The introduction hooks me in, and it covers the concept of God into a story called The Smoky Mirror. It emphasizes the divine nature of all existence. He describes God as the universal force of life, the creator. The mirror represents the individual soul, a reflection of God's light and truth. However, the smoke caused by fear, false beliefs, and societal conditioning obscures this divine reflection, making it difficult for individuals to recognize their connection to God. Even though this story does not align with the Bible perfectly, it was amazing that God was still reaching out to me through this book. And I'll briefly go and list off the four agreements. The first agreement being, be impeccable with your word. The second, don't take anything personally. The third, don't make assumptions. And the fourth, always do your best. I won't spoil too much of the book for those that are interested, but these agreements are easier said than done. And even to this day, I find God helping me through all four agreements. But this book had essentially cleared my stress, my doubts, my worries, and helped me get to where I am today. Up until recently, when I had been self-reflecting, I didn't realize that this book was God still saying he was here. Fast forward to today, God helped me transition after college to finding a job as a tennis coach, which in turn allowed me to meet such great individuals that led me to open up my own financial practice. When opening up my practice, it was difficult, but I couldn't have done it without my partner, who is a very devout Christian. And he had helped me guide me back to church. And as I look back, I can see that God was the one that put me where I am, put specific people in my life. He had also put this church family here ready to receive me. So I will not chalk it up to coincidence. Everything that had happened to me was God guiding me every step of the way. I had willingly neglected going to church and even neglected God. But even so, at the end of undergrad school, when I was stressed about what to do with my life, God was still there for me, and he never left. Amen.
Happy Sabbath. I'm a little nervous. Okay. So 2024 was a wild roller coaster for me. I had major changes in my life in terms of work, pursuit of different careers, and as well, most importantly, my continuous mending relationship with God. At the beginning of the year, my relationship with God was not the most genuine. I will just reach out to Him whenever I felt lonely, whenever I felt that, I needed Him. But it wasn't the feeling of I knew He was going to help me go through them. It was more of a just pray because you're always being taught to pray. So it wasn't as genuine as I would love to have done it back then. And I also didn't pray as constantly. It was just every now and then when I will remember. So my relationship with God wasn't strong. It was cutting little pieces. And the new job that He provided me this year also was a pull and push from my relationship with Him. It kept me busy and it kept me distracted, but it also allowed me to go near Him as I saw the need of Him. The job really brought in many challenges, and most of the challenges were mainly either I had to take work on the weekends or I had to take work on the weekdays, and it didn't allow me to even have time to either pray or focus on Him. And the other challenges was more of the pull. It was the people that I worked with gave me a lot of side comments, tension, and it made me not even want to go to work. So within that environment, I knew that I really needed God because I couldn't do it alone, because I knew that by myself, I wouldn't last in that job. And so I like to paint that little path as a path of rocks, thorns, and very foggy. And as I started going to church, everything was simultaneously. I found this church. I was already coming here, but it started to, realize the need of Him, and knowing that my prayers before didn't work because I didn't pray the right thing. It was more of I wanted the green path, rainbows and flowers, but the path that I saw in reality was not that way. And as I started to pray more, the fog started to fade away, and I started to see His hand just waiting for me to get a hold of, and knowing that He was always there to begin with, and it was just time for me to acknowledge that He will let me get through this journey, and not by taking away the trials, not by taking away the rocks or polishing those thorns, but by going through with it. So just to summarize, the team that, in terms of my work, the team that I started with in the beginning, now it's unrecognizable. And it made me realize just how God can change people. And even if they may not be Christians, and even if I thought like, oh, I don't want to pray for you, just seeing how you are. But the moment that I started praying for them, and also letting my community know about my situation and praying for it too, I started to see a change in their character, a change in the environment that I worked in. And those were little things that I started to see in my life and seeing how God truly worked in that area, among other different ones that I'm not going to go into right now. But as the year goes on, I became closer to our church community here. The continuous Bible studies that Pastor Matt provided and Vespers allowed me to revisit some concepts that I thought I knew about, but I didn't really internalize the message. It was more of, oh, I know that story, but what did it actually thought about, what did Jesus wanted us to learn from? And it also enabled me to seek him, even when I did not want to. Because I knew inside that if I go to Bible study, I will have to hear him, which started to soften my heart each time. And I like to paint it as a picture of like a rebellious horse. Sometimes some reins needs to be pulled. And my friends and community were those reins that kept me from straying away and staying near God. So the journey of the softening of my heart, it not only came with work, it came with other aspects of my life too. But it started to make some alterations in my relationship with God. Like I hear some people say, the more that time you spend with a person, the more you start to get attracted to them. So I believe God had placed me here for a reason, and he gave me at his own time lesson, and it brought meaning to my life once again. I may not have seen or recognized at that time the small actions and steps that he helped me go through. But he was still there with me, walking alongside me and clearing the path that I was afraid to walk on. And now my relationship with him is getting stronger. I'm not saying that it's perfect, and I'm not saying that I'm 100%, good with him now. It's still a walking process. But now, instead of seeing him someone unreachable, it's actually someone, God is now my father, a friend, and a counselor. So at least that is the message for my life, is that for him, I don't need to. There's nothing in between me and him, and for now is looking at him as he is and learning more about him and truly knowing who he is and seeing that he's always been there for me, even if I didn't want to see him. So.
Happy Sabbath, everyone. I told Pastor Matt I'm not good at public speaking, and I'm also a little congested, so just bear with me, okay? So with this year coming to an end and the Christmas spirit in the air, I always find myself reflecting this time of year on where I was at the start of it. It feels like I blinked and 2024 was almost over, but when I take the time to look closer, I'm just filled with gratitude and awe at all the blessings God gifted me this year. I've always struggled with anxiety and those seeds of doubt anxiety tends to plant. Doubts about like my own capabilities or what's possible in the future, uncertainties and how I'm going to get there, and just all these things that come with anxiety. And sometimes in the midst, I get lost in these moments of uncertainty, and it can start to feel really lonely. This time last year, I was in a total 180 of where I am now. I wasn't attending church regularly. I was feeling like I was outgrowing conditions in every aspect of my life, relationships with friends, family, work. And even though I knew change was necessary, I didn't have the courage or strength to walk away on my own. I knew that I needed to get right with God, and that what that meant for me was to start praying consistently and faithfully to Him to help me grow into the person that I'm meant to be according to His will. This meant surrendering everything I was familiar with, walking away from people I loved, environments I was unhappy yet comfortable being in, and surrendering everything and letting Him take the reins. The second step was fostering my relationship with God. This meant prioritizing Him first, to start attending church regularly again, and to surround myself with people who also loved God. When my sister was 5 years old, she passed away in her sleep. I was 7, and it was something that I've always kind of struggled with. When you experience grief that young and you witness it with somebody so close to you, you have a hard time wrapping your head around it. And this summer was the 20th anniversary of her passing, and it's something I never found peace with. And in my grief and sorrow, I just started to pray, consistently and fervently to God to help me navigate this. Even all these years later, grief is not something that really ever goes away. And I would always, after work, go to a special place where I could just be alone and be in God's presence and talk to Him openly and freely and do what I needed to do. And I would do this every day after work. And slowly I started to feel, more at peace with understanding, her passing and it being her being so young. Even though I still don't quite understand fully, there was a sense of relief that I got just from being in the presence of God and having that line of communication with Him open, being able to lean on Him. And so, I would do this every day, and over time, it turned into like a weekly thing, and I'd go a couple times a week, and now I go about once a month as time allows. Now, in 2022, at the beginning of 2022, one of my dear childhood friends just randomly texted me one night. He called me, and I remember being in bed and getting the phone call, and I just remember seeing his name pop up on my screen and thinking, oh my God, something happened. And I was kind of bracing myself for terrible news. And I answer the phone, and he's like, Eve, what's up? And I'm like, bro, you scared me. I thought something happened. You're calling me at 11 o'clock at night. I thought there was an emergency. And he's like, no. I just wanted to check up on you, see how you were doing. This friend no longer lives in the area, and I hadn't seen him at this point in 8 years. So yeah, the phone call was totally out of the blue, and he just wanted to check in. So we talked for about an hour, and that was that. After that, we would check in with each other every few months, just pop in, hey, how are you? Hope life's good, how's work, how's family? And, it's nothing really more than that. And then January this year, same thing. Hey, Eve, Happy New Year, hope you're doing good. Thanks, you too. Oh, by the way, I just got a cat. Oh, that's so cool. I love cats. And, same dynamic. A few months later in April, hey, Eve, had a dream about you. I hope you're doing good. Thanks, you too. And it was never really more than that. The conversation would always kind of fizzle out. And then I didn't hear from him for a while until this November. And he reached out and said, hey, Eve. Hey, Eve, I understand if you can't, but my little sister just suddenly passed away. Sorry, guys, it's still kind of fresh. And I was just wondering if you would have the time to get to talk sometime. I'll be in town until November 22nd. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, of course, I'm available anytime you need. And so we planned a day and time to get together. And this is the first time I've seen him in 8 years. And I went to his house to go pick him up. And, excuse me, seeing him, you never would have thought that he was going through what he was going through. I mean, he was just the same person I always remembered. He's always been this jokester. He's just effortlessly funny and warm and charismatic, and just looking at him, you never would know. And, so we talked for a few hours, and we didn't even talk about what was going on. We just reminisced on old times, and and it was just, so beautiful to be in that moment where we just, for a second, could escape reality and what was going on. And later in the night, we kind of started talking about what was going on a little bit, and I asked, well, how did she pass? And he tells me, and I was just in awe. I was like, there's no way. And she actually passed the same exact way my little sister passed 20 years ago. Now, my friend had no prior knowledge of this. He had no idea I even had a little sister. It's not really something I talk about. And that was the first time I'd ever seen him just break down and start crying. But, in that moment, I knew that there was a connection, and that God has been paving the way all this time, even all those years ago. I mean, if you would have told me that phone call in 2022 was, God meticulously and intentionally placing us in these moments along this path to get us to this point now, I mean, it really is incredible when I reflect, because as Pastor Matt was saying in his sermon last Sabbath, there's no coincidence in this. It's divine appointment. And, as Pastor Matt said, God has a way of weaving our stories together. And it was, really, there was a profound moment, I think, because I never felt quite understood. I don't know anyone who's lost somebody that close. And for him to lose his younger sister in the exact same way too, it kind of connected us in a way that nobody could really understand unless you've gone through it yourself. And I remember just spending the entire night with him, and we were just talking. And then it's pretty late in the night, and we go downstairs, and his mom is awake. And there she is on the sofa, in the midst of her grief. She's with her sister. It's just the two of them in the middle of the night. And they have worship music on. And she's just, praising Jesus in the midst of all of this. And ever since, that's been a scene that's been on loop in my mind, is what a profound faith that woman has, that even after losing her youngest child, she's sitting here at 3:30 in the morning praising God. I mean, how beautiful is that? And that was such a testament for me as well, and in finding peace with my sister's passing is that, I can be strong in it if I lean on God. I don't have to do it all by myself, and I can't do it all by myself. So, Genesis, I think it's 49:52, but let me double check. Genesis 41:52 says, God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. And then one of my favorite verses, Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, but plans to give you hope in a future. I've always kept that with me in my heart, even when I wasn't attending church regularly, that holding on to that hope and leaning on God for strength and my own limitations of understanding and strength, that there is fruitfulness. And I think in being able to be there for my friend in that moment in a way that I don't think anyone else could have been, it was a really powerful thing to experience. And so, yeah, as I reflect on this year, I'm just, so grateful. And we may not understand in the moment, and we may wish for blessings to be instant. But this year has truly been a testament to the living power of God's word, that when we seek him and we trust in him and his timing, God truly does reveal, and God fulfills his word.
Good morning, everybody. I like public speaking. It's actually kind of a terrible thing because my ideas kind of just go all over the place. See, I put the mic here, take it off. I was actually delegating, should I speak into it? Should I just hold it? Whatever. So growing up, we hear a lot of sayings that kind of stick with us throughout life. For me, one of the ones that's always stuck around is, I'm always a day late and $1 short. That's kind of, I hear that from a lot of people, the story of my life. And so that's been with me for like forever. So it's been a running joke for me as well. So as I've shared with a lot of you, at the beginning of the year on January 10th is when I was not feeling so well. I went to the doctor. I went to go get examined. And they were like, hey, so we're going to take some T scans and MRIs and go see what's going on with you, right? Well, probably after the scan, 30 minutes later, doctor calls me. He's like, hey, this isn't looking so good. You got a tumor inside of you, and it's looking pretty bad. So I'm going to send you over to a specialist and go get this checked out. So that was on a Friday, I believe. And so probably like 2-3 days later, I'm now with the specialist. The specialist says, hey, man, I'm going to just be straight with you. And he's like, you pretty much have cancer at this point. And I was like, oh, that's great. I was like, I really don't know what to make of this. My first thought was, well, what's going on here? I was like, I'm on this path. I've been kind of, working my relationship with God. I've seen blessings. I've seen a lot of things happen positively. Now here I'm impacted by a negative thing in life. And so, of course, first thought usually is, okay, start sharing with everybody, try to get some help, support, not feel so discouraged in this point in time. So to everybody that I reached out to and everybody that reached back out to me, thank you for taking my texts, phone calls, conversations. Like it really means a lot, and I'm really, really grateful for all of you. But the thing is, whenever you are going through something and you have the support of your friends, during the daytime, you talk and you're like, oh great, I'm not alone. I can take this on. I have my friends behind me. But what happens when you're up at 3 o'clock in the morning and everybody's sleeping, and you have this idea of, or these ideas start going through your head of, what is going to happen with me? What's going to happen with my life? As you know, I have kids. What's going to happen to them? What about my parents? What about my siblings? As the news started kind of spreading out, it sunk in more and more deeper. And I remember kind of just, being there late at night and praying often. I remember, I'm going to just throw this out there, but I would call Jason often, talk to him about this. But the night before I had to get surgery done to get this tumor removed from me was probably the one that was hitting me the worst. I felt so kind of afraid of what would happen next. I felt so lost and discouraged because I was like, God, what's going to happen to me? What if they perform the surgery, it becomes unsuccessful, and I got to do chemotherapy, and the next thing you know, I go for broke, and I'm stuck living in the street, or something's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my kids? What's going to happen to my world around me that here we have? And that night before I prayed, I whispered, and at some point in time, I fell asleep. I just remember waking up in the morning and going over to the operating office. And so we get to the operating office, and I go to the front cashier. And so, whenever you get a procedure done, they give you an estimate of good faith of what it might cost you to get this procedure done. So I had allocated so much money out of my checkings account, and then I walked in, and so I was like, all right, cool. So here I am at the front desk with the receptionist, and so I was like, hi, good morning, I'm here for surgery for Luis. I know there's a copay I got to do. And so she's like, oh, okay. So there I was looking at my bank account, on my phone, going like, oh, I hope I have enough to cover for this. And so then she pulls out the estimate piece of paper and slides it on over to me. And as I'm looking at it, I looked at the estimate and I looked at my thing, and for a minute there I thought I was right on the tee for the money. I was like, oh man, the good faith estimate was right. It was actually $1 short. So at that point in time, I started kind of laughing. I looked at it and I said, you got to be kidding me. And so at that point in time, I knew I wasn't alone in this predicament anymore. I had finally gotten a little bit of a sense of humor, a laugh from God. And I was extremely grateful for it. So as I turned around, I looked over at the girl I was dating at that point, and I asked her, it's like, hey, do you have any change on you? Because, you got change, you might have $1 or get close to. And so she's like, no, I don't have any. And I was getting ready to ask everybody in the operating room, hey, so I need this life-saving procedure, but I'm $1 short. Anybody got $1 to spare? I promise I'll pay you back. And so as I was getting up to do that, the lady was like, hey, come back over here. And so she was like, so are you really just $1 short? And I was like, yeah. And so she's like, don't worry about it. I'll got you. So with that, I went into the surgery. As a matter of fact, they took a picture of me. And in this picture, I'm happy smiling, even though I'm going in for, cancer surgery. But I was in really high spirits, and even after I came out of it, I remember at that point in time, I was thinking to myself a little bit more along the lines of you know what? If God was able to humor me at this point in time when I was extremely mortified of what was going to happen, that means He's going to take care of me. These tiny little things mean a lot to Him. Even this tiny little saying that has followed me throughout life. At this point in time, it came in and it made me laugh. And so with that, I would like to share the following passage, which I think is very, very applicable here. It's from Deuteronomy 31:8. And the Lord, He is the one who goes before you. He will be with you. He will not leave you nor forsake you. Do not fear nor be dismayed. If this is the same God that made the promise to the Israelites back then, and we are His children, that same promise applies to us. So therefore, I would like to encourage all of you to put your trust in God, put your faith in Him. He will take care of you regardless of your circumstances. Thank you.